So remember that whole Mauga meta thing? Well, it's already over before it started. Literally, Blizzard has made a mid-season patch 2 days before the start of this first upcoming OWCS tournament, and it has taken a turn to completely change what we saw compared to last week. Surely this won't cause any chaos on the timeline, as teams have to go through some last-second preparations. Surely not. As a reminder, there are valuable circuit points that go towards qualifying for the 2 major LAN events, as well as cash prizes on the line here that could end up being significantly changed. It's unfortunate that now my EMEA video from yesterday is kinda obsolete, but oh well, Blizz can be unpredictable, we take it on the chin, and we move forward. And in today's video, we'll be moving into the promised part 2 of my 2-part Overwatch Champions Series Stage 1 preview, this time taking a deep dive into North America. Without further ado, let's just dive right into this thing, and we might as well begin with the hot topic at hand, aka the nerfs that went down to completely change the meta, at least to a certain extent. So, with the Mauga changes going in, as well as Symmetra being a bit weaker now, and Sombra as well, it all but kills that crazy screen clutter, brain-dead meta that we had to bear witness to last week. And in Mauga's place, we're probably going to see a lot of Orisa. That's what I've heard all across the internet. That seems to be the consensus of pros. And in general, we know that her playtime has been seeing a big-time uptick. We saw it in Korea. We've already seen some of the Western teams incorporate her as well. So she's probably going to be the main focal point of the new compositions. And to accompany her, in all likelihood, kind of what was being played in Korea before the whole Mauga thing came into effect. Lucio is of course still really good. Soj is still very good. Tracer is going to be more in favor. Maybe you see some Mei into the mix as well. Baptiste might get some more playtime over Kiri and Moira just because of his synergy with Orisa. That seems to be the direction where things are treading right now. Although some teams may decide to just abandon that altogether and play what they're comfortable with, just knowing that there's not that much time to prepare. They'd rather just go in there, play what they're good at, and hope for the best, which could lead to some very interesting rock, paper, scissors gameplay. And if level of comfort is the name of the game, it's quite clear that a couple of teams are going to have a major advantage over some of the others. Let's look at our participants. First and foremost, when we're thinking of North America, the one team that consistently comes to mind is the Toronto Defiant. They are the predetermined North American kings. They're who everybody's looking up to. They're supposed to be the dominator of NA, with a bunch of former Overwatch League superstar talent as well as Vega leading the way. From top to bottom at every individual position, they arguably gap just about any other team in NA as of right now of the teams that are actually established. They are just in the best possible shape from an overall outlook and what you'd expect from them. They're super flexible, they've got the star playmakers, they've got the resources, and in this type of meta, where things are suddenly changing at the last second, that's going to favor a team like this. One that's going to likely be prepared no matter what the outlook is. I mean, we saw Toronto even messing around in scrims, trying to figure out how to counter Mauga, to no avail of course, but they've been getting their practice in on other compositions. They're going to stay warmed up over there. And to be honest, I'm kind of terrified if the meta treads the exact way you think it would. Because we're talking putting RuPaul and Merit back on their characters that helped them win an Overwatch League championship not even a year ago, plus the likes of someone leading the way at tank, arguably the most flexible frontliner in the entire world right now. That just gives you so many different unique advantages, and it's hard to see how Toronto would ever lose, just to be super upfront with it. They are clearly in a better position than everyone else. This is more so about gauging just how good they really are. If they truly want to be a contender this year, they need to beat down these NA players, these NA teams, in these types of tournaments. That's how much we're going to see if the needle can move or not. It can go very much backwards or forwards depending on what we see. The expectation is they dominate, but if there's some kind of struggle, well, then maybe we have to move them a bit lower down the totem pole. It's not to say they have no competition, though. So far, they haven't had to play any of the top teams. I mean, they had to play Shikigami and Final Gambit in Group A, just a bunch of irrelevant teams. how they're going to do against the top dogs will be a bit more interesting. And said top dogs, who I see as probably the top 2 and top 3 teams respectively, are M80 and Timeless. These two ended up actually playing each other in their respective groups because of how the Swiss stage went, and the newcomers, the new guys, Timeless, ended up taking a 5-map victory over the heavily favored M80, who have a lot of different OWL veterans on their side. Regardless, they're still both very good, and they probably pose the biggest threat to Toronto. Not that that necessarily means all that much. Let's start with the Timeless boys, as for some of you still may not be that familiar with them. So these guys have kind of been on the up and coming for a while. The likes of Rocket and Chopper and Riker and Icy, they've been grinding contenders for quite a bit. I've been a massive fan of Rocket and Chopper as a DPS line, and they showed they're ready to take another step with how they played in a matchup with M80 against some very notable superstar DPS OWL players. And now that Amalgam meta is going away, this more so falls back into their favor. Rocket and Chopper are an absolutely disgusting Tracer Sojourn duo. They can cause some absolute havoc on the timeline, and I'd expect them to do very good in this tournament as well. They built up some needed confidence with that matchup with M80, and they're going to get a chance to take on Toronto Defiant pretty early on in this thing to see just how capable they really are. This will be a great test to see how they handle the pressure in more ways than one. You've got a big tournament like this that you've never been able to participate in beforehand, and there's a new meta all of a sudden just like that. You only have a couple of days of preparation. Now we're going to see how they handle that pressure and stress, and if they could maybe take advantage of everybody being in a panic state. This is a chance to show just how much they've grown and that they're ready to take a step forward as one of the best teams in the world. But if they want to be that number 2 team bare minimum in NA, it's likely going to have to go through M80, who, like I said before, took a tough loss to Timeless, but it still was a very close matchup, and clearly right now they still aren't completely comfortable with one another, and they're not at full strength. This team was literally assembled like the day of the Swiss stage. It was absolute chaos. They ended up walking away with a better team than what they initially had, but they still have some work to do. Just knowing that they're still kind of new to each other here and there. They've got a couple of Korean imports that I believe are still on ping. Pelican was on ping during the groups. He's probably still going to be on ping. So there's disadvantages and challenges this team has to overcome while growing. But if they can put it all together, we know they can be dangerous based off of the talent and all of the household names that are presenting themselves here. I mentioned how Timeless might be pretty comfortable if the meta goes the way as expected, but it might even apply more so to Toronto than them. We already saw them play a bit of that Orisa beforehand during the groups. It seems like a bread and butter comp they've already been working on here and there. Hawk is rather good on that character. I feel like he has been for a few years now. And there are a couple of Toronto boys on this team, and they felt very good when playing that Orisa comp during the Overwatch League during late 2023. And like I said, they're only going to get better over time because they were formed so late into this thing. This time could be a lot different if they meet up with Timeless again. There's a chance they could end up losing to them once again, but they almost had their number. They almost put them down for good. That was a super close series, and as the veterans with more experience in these high-pressure scenarios, that just might give them the edge to climb back into that 2 spot and or beyond. Now, in my opinion, a combination of 2 of those 3 teams are going to be in the finals. Probably Toronto plus one of the others. But there's a couple of other teams that could be dark horse candidates that you have to look out for. And in my eyes, they both come out of Group B. We're talking about Luminosity Gaming, aka Maryville, and LFO. Luminosity would be the ones to take home first place in Group B. They actually didn't even play LFO because they choked to Citrus Nation. Something we could talk about a bit after. But they didn't really have to do that much to get here. It was just a nice easy 2-0 for them. There was a bit of a struggle during the early portion of their series against Citrus Nation, but according to them, it was more so because there was no warm-up scrim beforehand, so they were just getting into the game. After that, it was kind of a blowout from there. But hey, at the very least, they did give us one of the most entertaining control maps I've ever seen in my entire life. Luminosity don't have a lot of crazy names, but perhaps some of the more underrated players out there that are going to play well together as a collegiate team that already have a lot of experience and synergy compared to a couple of these other teams who are maybe a bit more on the new side. They're led by Dante, Overwatch League veteran who was there for 6 years, who has so much experience to help lead the way through the pressure. He can keep his team composed, and he's got the hero pool as well. We've seen him play some Orisa. We know he's going to be a star playmaker for this team. He'll serve a lot of good purposes, and I think he's going to help this team go far. I believe Luminosity is not getting nearly enough credit. They've got a good combination of players, both young and experienced, and in this particular meta, if it ends up sticking, they should feel pretty comfortable out there. Maybe one of the most comfortable of any of the teams in this tournament. Luminosity have the tools, and they just might have it in them to crack that top 3 and pull off an upset over one of the favorites. And LFO could be held in a similar light. Maybe not as high of a pedestal as Luminosity, but in terms of potential, maybe somewhat close. The downside with this team is they are super mixed. There's maybe still a lot of synergy building that needs to be happening with them because they were formed rather recently, only like a couple of weeks ago at this point. That could end up being an issue, especially when communication is so key. But you know they have the talent. If they can just figure out the other part, they're going to be kind of scary to deal with. Seeker in a Sojourn meta is never a joke. Honestly, they have a couple of different players on this team who ended up just going underappreciated in their OWL careers because they weren't on good enough teams. You have a pretty decent combination that maybe isn't expected to go that far, and they could perhaps use that to their advantage. But again, I'm looking to see them finally put 2 and 2 together. They didn't exactly play great in the group stage. They dropped a game to Citrus Nation out of nowhere, a game that nobody expected them to lose, showing that they probably still have a long way to go before they're truly at the top. Nonetheless, another team to look out for sure that could probably at least make a decent run at this thing. That's like the top 5, though. All teams that I think maybe could at least get to the top 3 at some point in this tournament. The other teams who are more so hopefuls, or you probably don't have much hope for at all, are Pirates in Pajamas, Students of the Game, and Shikigami. No offense to Shikigami, I hope they do well, but we all know they're probably not going to do anything. They just don't have the talent, they don't stack up. But I do have to shout them out for one reason, and one reason alone. They gave us God's gift to Overwatch. The GOAT himself, Sexy Man 69. Maybe the best player to ever grace our presence in the history of professional Overwatch. I am praying that this man takes the stage once again to bless us with his sexiness. And with our other 2 competitors, I'm just hoping that maybe they can show us something and be entertaining, or perhaps take advantage of the sudden meta shift and make an upset happen. One of those teams is Students of the Game, aka Rack Attack's team. Congrats to him on finally getting some wins on an official broadcast for the first time since he was in Contenders. That's really great for him, and the team he has around him is not bad at all. They actually did quite well for themselves in the group stage. Some struggles and hiccups here and there, but they didn't drop a single map, which is absolutely great. They got a quality win over Dreamland and Pirates in Pajamas. They're in a pretty decent spot to maybe make an upset happen if things really go their way, or they get an opponent that they just know inside and out. And hey, at the very least, they don't have anything to play for, which could play to their advantage, and they have a lot of motivated individuals on this team, like Infected, and that underrated DPS line of PGE and Scissors. They could do some real damage, and at bare minimum, put their names more so on the map. And if you know you're not going to win, that's a good consolation prize. And the same could probably be said for Pirates in Pajamas, although I think they have even less potential to go far and make an upset happen than Students of the Game. Shout out to Magic Mateball and to Pirates for proving me right and making it through the groups. I'm proud of them. I ended up not missing any of the NA picks aside from Artemis, who sadly got disqualified before the thing happened. So I appreciate your efforts, but you're probably going to be 2 and out. And that's basically NA in a nutshell. It's a very straightforward region, and my Stage 1 power rankings for this tournament reflect upon that. Unfortunately, it's just a very, very top-heavy region, like even more so than EMEA or even Korea, as in there's just not a lot of teams that are going to be in competition to be number 1. It just feels like Toronto's region to lose at this point. Barring any miracles, they should just be running over absolutely everyone, knowing how good their roster and resources are compared to everybody else. Maybe a few things below them could be interchanged, like maybe you prefer M80 over Timeless, which I think is understandable. I'm high on Timeless right now. They beat M80 as well, so I'm sold. Luminosity could go up or down depending on the meta as well, but generally it feels pretty cut and dry if you're looking at the very bottom and the very top. And again, it may not even matter that much because Toronto, if all things go according to plan, should just be absolutely everybody. And that's kind of what my bracket reflects upon as well. Surprise, surprise, Toronto, I have winning it very easily. I'm going to say they just go out and win 4-0. The top dogs are teams that still need to improve and young guys that still have something to prove. So Toronto just feel like the very easy choice. Not to mention the whole meta thing, right? Again, they have multiple Florida Mayhem 2023 champions on this team. These guys are used to being flexible and playing more things than most other teams could even dream of. They're probably going to be the least stressed out of any of the other teams. Some teams are clearly going to benefit from this because they weren't that good at the Malga stuff to begin with, but still, they're probably just going to be the most prepared. It's in their DNA at this point, especially when you have a tank player like someone who can just do anything you want him to do, no problem at all. Literally all the cards fall their way, and at this point, it would take a massive choke or them simply not taking this tournament very seriously for things to not go their way. If Toronto don't win this tournament with relative ease, I'd be surprised and very concerned. Don't get it twisted though, Toronto won't ruin all the fun. I believe some of these games could end up being really good outside of the finals, outside of Toronto being involved. Honestly, seeing who makes it to second could be kind of fun, and I could see 2, 3, maybe even 4 teams making it there. I'm going with Timeless personally. I have them beating M80 in the semifinals in the losers bracket to get here. I just believe that they're the hot hand you have to ride with right now. They're a very complete roster. They're on the rise with so much to prove. If they've beaten M80 before, they can do it again, especially if Pelican is still on ping. Not to say that I don't believe in Pelly, he's absolutely amazing, but playing Tracer on ping is not exactly the most fun thing in the world, especially against the likes of Rocket and Chopper. So I'm going with Timeless, maybe my favorite team in North America right now, to make it to that second place spot. They'll probably get 4-0'd, but hey, it's cool to make it there at the very least. And that essentially wraps up my thoughts on the North American tournament coming up this week. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below and what your predictions are. I'd love to hear from you. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to stay up to date with all the most recent Overwatch Champion Series information, content I make on this channel, and any other big news, make sure to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new. I've been ATP, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.